Welcome to Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino, live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app. And if you're watching on YouTube, we hope you hit subscribe. Today on the show, excited to talk some NFL with Meghan Payton and find out what she's looking to bet. Plus, we'll get some market insights from Patrick Everson. But we start in the NBA after a big shakeup within the Bucks organization. Adrian Griffin is out as head coach midway through his first season running a team. The Bucks may be 30-13, good for second in the Eastern Conference, but they're one of the league's worst in terms of opponent points per game. They're 22nd in defensive efficiency this season after being fourth last season. Time for more money with Matt Moore and Jay Money. Great to see you guys. Matt, I'll start with you because you wrote an extensive column for Action Network about this. Why was the decision made to move on from Griffin?
Yeah, Maria, this was a long time coming. This wasn't any sort of surprise for anyone that's paid attention to what's been going on in Milwaukee this season. It's going to surprise a lot of people because they look at the overall record for the Bucks and go, but they were second best team in the Eastern Conference. But whenever you looked under the hood, you saw that there were a lot of problems there. The indication was pretty much that Griffin started losing the players from the get-go. There's a lot of indications that Damian Lillard always had some skepticism about him. Obviously, Terry Stotts, Dame's old coach, left in preseason. That was a warning sign. Then you have Bobby Portis calling out the coach after the in-season tournament, reported by Chris Haynes. Chris Middleton and Brooke Lopez had to have heavy conversations with Griffin about changing his scheme in order to get the defense back on track, and it never did. And then finally, it seemed over the last couple of weeks that he'd lost the confidence of Giannis. Giannis was a huge advocate for Griffin's hiring this summer. He was a major voice in the front office's decision to hire Griffin. And when Giannis lost that confidence in Griffin, that may have been his kind of last step before being let go. I think when you look at the team, confidence was spiraling despite the record. And it's a good indication sometimes that how the players feel about their own game, especially with a veteran squad like this that's competing for a championship, that's more important than just looking at the record and telling yourself that everything's fine.
In my opinion, when I saw that the Bucks traded for Damian Lillard, I wouldn't have moved on from Budenholzer or even gotten a first-year head coach knowing that you're making that trade. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, and they didn't know that, until after the fact. But still, they are now moving on, and Doc Rivers is set to become the next head coach. Jay, does this coaching change overall make you feel better or worse about Bucks' futures?
Well, I think you had made a really good point about how they hired him and then the trade happened because they just didn't expect to be having championship aspirations this year. But in my opinion, I do think this could possibly really backfire on the Bucks. What happens if they fire their first-year coach? They were 30-13. I know there was a ton of things going on, but what happens if they start to drop to the fifth in the East with their new coach there? So I'm just kind of wondering, what if it backfires? I still think they're maybe the third best team in the East. I think maybe closer to 4 or 5, but that's just me personally. I feel like if they were playing the Cavs or the Pacers in a first round series like today, they might get kicked out of the first round here. So I'm still not a believer in their defenders. I know that coaching wise and schemes can maybe sometimes hide that a little bit, but I'm still not. I know basketball and I watch a ton of basketball, and these guys, I don't like their roster. I don't like their bench. They obviously, Giannis and Dame can go off in any game, but they have guys that are on their rosters that are just plain and simple not good defenders. So I don't know if you're going to have to run zone the whole game, but one-on-one, these guys will continue to get beat off the dribble no matter who is the coach out there. And we've also seen Doc Rivers time and time again blow 3-1, 3-2 series leads in the playoffs. So I just think this makes the Bucks even more of a regular season team. Let's see what happens in the playoffs.
Matt?
I think it makes them a little better. I think your futures plays on the Bucks are a little bit better now, just because you have to make this type of move if the veterans aren't bought in. And now the veterans will be bought in. This was clearly a move that the veterans on that team, including Giannis, are going to sign off on, and they're going to feel pretty good. Doc's consistent. Okay. Doc's is very good at coaching principles. I talked to an NBA veteran this season. He was talking to me about how the regular season is about working on your principles and the playoffs are about finding solutions. The problem with the Bucks this season is that they did not have any principles. Their principles were completely undermined by how they were playing. It did not fit the roster at all. They'll fix all those. The defense is going to be better. Jay's not wrong that Malik Beasley is touted as like their best perimeter defender. Yikes. That I agree there. That's a concern. But you could still manage with Chris Middleton. You could still manage with Brook Lopez by putting them in better spots. And Giannis is still a hugely impactful defender. They'll play more defenders in the playoffs. Jay Crowder, those types of guys. They'll find options. I think Marjon Beauchamp actually has some upside in those capacities. They'll find answers on defense. But Jay's right, though, that the playoff concerns are a real issue because as good as Doc is at improving those principles, he struggles in finding answers. The playoffs now are not about how good you can be. It's about finding solutions to the problems presented. Denver was one of the best teams at that last season. Guess what? They won the title. We saw teams that could answer and formulate different solutions to the problems presented round by round. Those are the ones that advance now. Rivers has never been strong at that. He was most successful in 2008 with the Celtics team where they were just better than everybody else at what they did. But without that kind of advantage, it really is going to put a limitation on what they can achieve. So no, I don't want a position on the Bucks as an Eastern Conference champion right now. But I do think that there will be ways in which they will look better over the back half of the season. And it's going to improve their standing in various matchups. They have a better shot now moving on from Griffin and adding Doc. But against the top tier of the East, they're still very low in terms of the coaching pecking order, especially given the fact that one of the weakest coaches in the Eastern Conference, Joe Mazzulla, he outcoached Doc last year. So all of this leads to this is not the time to be buying in on the Bucks. Let's see what Doc does with them first, and especially what kind of matchups they're going to get in the playoffs.
Absolutely. They needed to make a change, but we're still not sold. And then as far as defense is concerned, I agree with Jay that there are clear holes, on this roster, but defense is a commitment, and it's a lot harder to commit on that end when you don't believe in the coaching and you don't believe in the direction of the team. So hopefully we'll see that improve. Now, if you want to see what the Bucks will look like without Griffin coaching against the hottest team in the NBA, the Cavs, and maybe make some bets, go to the NBA app on League Pass, find that game, click on BetStream, because I'm going to be hanging out. And you can watch along with me and our experts starting at 8 Eastern. As for the rest of the slate tonight, Jay, what's your best bet?
I will say that I do think the Bucks come out with a new sense of energy tonight. So it's not my best play of the day, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks came out in the first quarter and first half with just like happy that they got a change of scenery over there as far as the coaching wise. So, but my best play of the day is, it's a little ugly. I'm going with the Detroit Pistons on the money line in this one, but don't look now. They're playing a lot better basketball. They're 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games. A couple of those games were versus the Bucks and the Timberwolves as well, where they really had chances to win those games. You have they're going up against the Charlotte Hornets here that have six more won games in them, but they're the underdog in this game. The Charlotte Hornets are obviously coming off a win. They're 1-8 straight up coming off a win this season. I think it's going to be 1-9 tonight. Give me the Detroit Pistons in this game to win outright.
I really like it. Charlotte had no business beating the T-Wolves, and meanwhile, the Pistons are one of those teams that played the Bucks really tough the other night. So, Matt, what about you? What are you betting tonight?
2 things real quick. The Pistons are 0-2 as a favorite this season. This is a gutsy pick.
0-3. 0-3, Matt.
By Jay. 0-3. This is
it's gonna be 1-3 after tonight. I just wanted to correct you there. 0-3 straight up and against the spread as favorite. It's gonna be 1-3 tonight.
But by Jay, that's a bold pick. I actually think Charlotte's been playing okay. Plus, I also just want to commend our video crew for finding Pistons highlights to put together a reel. That must have took some deep dives.
You've seen them trying to watch the terrible Bucks defense and put that together. That was
there you go.
Watch. Anyway.
My best bet for tonight's the under 241 Mavs and Suns. I've got this projected at 237, so I've got about 4 points of value. The Suns have actually had the number 5 defense over the last 2 weeks. They've turned a corner on that end. I don't know if that's sustainable over the long term, but it's how they're playing right now. The Mavs under has hit in 4 of their last 6. There's a kind of an interesting trend happening. If you pay attention kind of to the chunks of the season, Dallas is slowing down more and more. They started off as a real high-paced team, and they're still in the top half of the league in pace, but they're slowly dipping down as the season goes along, getting more and more into Luka Doncic dribbles the air out of the ball, and then somebody shoots a 3. That takes more time off the clock. That gets us into a better spot here. The Suns also running a little bit less, focusing on defense. I think pace is going to be a little bit lower than this number projects. So I'll take the under 241 in Mavericks and Suns tonight.
Matt Moore, Jay Money. I always love doing these segments with you guys. Thanks so much for joining Green Dad Daily.
Thank you.
Anytime, Maria.
To the NFL, we have a matchup of elite quarterbacks in the AFC title game, but Lamar Jackson as a favorite of 3.5 or more is 23-31 or 42% ATS, ranking 174 out of 181 quarterbacks in the last 20 years, though that does include a cover most recently, of course. While Patrick Mahomes as an underdog is 8-3 straight up, 9-1-1 against the spread, 2-0 straight up, and ATS in the playoffs. I'm so excited that our friend, sports betting host and analyst Meghan Payton could join Green Dot Daily today. You know her from Action Island. What's up, Meghan?
How you doing, Maria? We've got a great AFC preview. We're talking about two elite quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. This is going to be a fun one to dive into.
Absolutely. And this is the dilemma that I've been facing. I want to bet the Ravens against the spread. I believe that is the play, but I wish that I bet it when it was -3. The line has moved to 3.5. It might even move more. And it's just given me a little bit of pause. I feel like the Patrick Mahomes aura is just overshadowing this one a little bit. How do you feel about it?
I have a little pause too, Maria, with the spread, but everything is lined up for the Ravens in this one. It feels like coaching is there. You're talking about the MVP of our league, Lamar Jackson, who is nearly impossible to contain. It's the impossible throws that he has, but then also the way that he can step up in the pocket. He can take off and run for 30+ yards. He is so good at disguising different ways. And then the other thing with the Ravens is their defense is so incredible. Best defense in the NFL, led by Roquan Smith. And when you've got a team that can pursue and tackle better than anyone in the NFL, it's got to give some trouble to Patrick Mahomes in this offense. And it's funny because I feel like the more that I talk about the Ravens, the more I look at the stats, the more I'm convinced I got to take them at -2.5. You wish that it was 3. You wish you were getting that extra, but on it, or 3.5, that is. You wish you were getting it at 2.5, but you got to go with it. But one bet, Maria, that I have been really strong on, it's Lamar Jackson over his rushing yards, 64.5. We've seen Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson play against each other 4 times. He's gone over this in 3 of them, 107 the last time they played. And guess what? Lamar Jackson just had 100 rushing yards in the last out. This is where he's so good and he makes tackles miss. And I really like him to clear this line.
Well, I'm pretty happy to hear you say that because it kind of goes hand in hand with a bet that I did make, and that was Lamar Jackson anytime touchdown at +120 odds. Really what it comes down to is the matchup. Kansas City defense, 18th against the rush in the regular season, and in the bottom half of the playoff field, the numbers are even more grim when you look at DVOA. And then Baltimore, conversely, has the best rush attack in the NFL. And Lamar Jackson is a big reason why. He just gives them another dimension. And so the Kansas City D is just going to have to pick their poison a little bit. And look, I don't hate that he found the end zone twice last weekend on the ground, maybe a little warm up here. He's the MVP, and to win and win handily, like, he's going to have to do MVP things. So that's the bet that I did go ahead and make for that matchup.
How is this plus money? Lamar Jackson to get in the end zone in the playoffs? The books,
I was thrilled.
You know, like the books knew, I feel like last week, and it kind of shortened from what it was in week 18. It's like, all right, Lamar in the playoffs, he's going to get in the end zone. And of course, it happens twice. The good thing about Lamar Jackson is there's no reason you're protecting him anymore. You're in the playoffs. Health is not a factor, and he can score from anywhere on the field. They're going to use him on the goal line. Yeah, of course. But he can also take off running at the 30-yard line and boom, take it to the house. Plus money on the Lamar Jackson touchdown feels like maybe one of the best bets we're going to get in this game.
Well, I'm glad I have your endorsement. And one other little nugget I want to mention that I saw, which kind of like made me think about this, was from our friend Gilles Gallant. And he tweeted about this, saying in each divisional round game, the player with the shortest odds to score a touchdown did actually find the end zone. So that's what we got. But we have to turn our attention to the NFC Championship now. Another good one. The Lions at San Francisco, home team laying 7. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Maria, can we first discuss how we're going from Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson to, all right, let's talk Brock Purdy, Jared Goff. Now, I do think that there's a little bit of extra hate that are coming towards these two quarterbacks. No, they're not in the same category as the elite. I look at this game as Niners have the edge here in pretty much every category. Talk about Christian McCaffrey. He's your do-it-all running back, should be in the MVP talks. And then the defense, though, is the key factor here on why I like the Niners to probably cover and definitely win. They are so dynamic. They've got Nick Bosa leading. They're going to attack the quarterback really quickly. And then they've got good corners that are really going to try to shut down Jared Goff and their passing attacks. Meanwhile, the Lions are giving up bottom numbers in yards per game in the passing game, which is not going to do well when you're going up against an elite Niners offense. However, what's the X factor here? It's Deebo Samuel dealing with that left shoulder injury. It's Wednesday. We still don't know if he's going to play. And I'm not saying that he's worth like 4 or 5 points, but if Deebo Samuel's out and this line stays at -7, I am hammering Lions +7 because that's how important Deebo is to the Niners. He leads the league in yards after catch per reception. He's your do-it-all receiver / running back, and the Niners are not going to be able to use all their different weapons the same way if Deebo's not in there. The game plan completely shifts, and I think that the Lions can match up offensively with them. Maybe they don't get the win, but I like them to cover if Deebo's going to be out.
It makes a lot of sense. And I'm seeing reports today that Deebo Samuel is not practicing because his shoulder hurts. So that is just kind of making me lean even more toward the Lions, especially when you consider that the 49ers struggled last week. And I believe that they are overvalued given their overall performance and including on the defensive end. I do wonder as well about this coaching matchup. A more conservative Kyle Shanahan, is he going to be exposed again against a more aggressive Dan Campbell? But full disclosure, I have not bet this yet because to your point, Detroit's secondary has definitely been vulnerable to those explosive pass plays.
Yeah, that's the big question mark there is even if you look at the box score with the Bucs-Lions game, the Lions were the better team in the second half, but they allowed Baker Mayfield to throw for over 300 passing yards. You can't do that against a Niners offense. If Brock Purdy comes out there and starts throwing these 30-plus yard plays, there's no way that the Lions are going to be able to keep up with that because the Niners defense is so much superior to them. So that's another little lean that I have too, is Brock Purdy over his passing yards going up against this struggling secondary that the Lions are with right now.
And something to consider about the Niners as well, even if they don't have Deebo, they're going to be more prepared for it this time.
Yeah.
Which get the benefit of having that preparedness last week. Okay, let's have some fun to close out this segment because you typically host Action Island where we build parlays. What's a parlay that you're cooking up for this weekend?
All right, Maria, here's our Wednesday way too early parlay, but let's have some fun. Let's make some plus money here. We're going to stick in this Niners-Lions game, and I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs over 22.5 receiving yards. Gibbs has been that elusive, explosive running back for Detroit, and one area he's really good in, and those quick check down throws, take off, patient, go off, and run. And one thing about Detroit is in the second half last week, they started throwing the ball nearly every first down. You look at the stats, it was wild. And they're going to be going up against a Niners defense that's going to create a lot of pressure, which means that Jared Goff is going to have to release the ball quick. Jahmyr Gibbs is that guy that's there, right there, check down, go off, run, 22.5. It feels like a good number there. I also like Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown. I'm partially biased because I was all over David Montgomery last week, and he was the one running back that didn't get in the end zone. So I'm switching up this week. Jahmyr Gibbs, same reason almost as Lamar Jackson. He can score from wherever on the field. They're going to give him the ball near in the red zone, but they're also going to give it to him 30 plus, and he can get in the end zone from there. So I like Jahmyr Gibbs over his receiving yards. Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown. And we talk about how to boost a parlay. Well, let's go Niners to win the game. It's crazy how these uncorrelated bets you'll call end up giving you a big boost. But one thing that I've learned from the Action Island team is that sometimes they're really not that uncorrelated. I see points in this game. I see Niners winning this game regardless. And I also see some receiving yards and some touchdowns from Jahmyr Gibbs. So you parlay that together, you're at plus 418. And that's my little preview for this Lions-Niners game.
You can catch Meghan on Friday at 5:30 Eastern, building parlays for both conference championship games, along with Nick Giffen, Gilles Gallant, and Sean Kerner. Meghan, this was an absolute blast. We have to do it again. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you so much, Maria. Let's have a fun championship weekend. I got to get this parlay up.
Let's do it. Keeping it in the NFL, here are the most popular bets in terms of tickets. Detroit money line at +260, getting the most love, followed by Detroit +7, the Kansas City money line at +165, Baltimore -3.5, and finally Kansas City +3.5. As we bring in senior reporter for Vegas Insider, Patrick Everson. Now, you've tipped us off to this before, that the Lions have been heavily bet all season. How are we seeing that trend continue?
Oh, it's definitely continuing. I think, honestly, first off, thanks for having me, Maria. One of the most interesting dynamics about betting on the NFC Championship game is this continued, absolutely maniacal Michigan market. I mean, if you thought Michigan bettors went crazy for the Lions throughout the regular season, well, they're a step beyond that with their team now in a conference championship game. BetMGM noted on Monday, Maria, a day into betting on Lions 49ers, that when you break out just the state of Michigan, how the game is being bet at BetMGM, in pure Michigan, if you will, 94% of point spread tickets are on the Lions. 91% of point spread money is on the Lions. It's a huge regional bias that I think easily matches any regional bias you might see in the New York, New Jersey market for New York teams. It might even be more than that. I think it's stronger than that, honestly, because a lot of New York and New Jersey types are very are like me with the Broncos. They just don't trust them at all. So with that huge regional bias, it significantly impacts. It's big enough to actually really significantly impact the national numbers. Detroit, for BetMGM nationally, is taking 72% of bets, 71% of money on the spread. That's national numbers. And on the money line, the +240, they're just finding it impossible to ignore. It's even more lopsided by percentage. 88% of bets, 77% of money on Detroit. And in fact, as you noted at the top of this segment, Maria, the most popular bet this weekend at BetMGM among both games in all markets, spread, money line, total, player props, all that, is Lions money line. BetMGM trader Christian Cipollini, he told me, he pretty much confirmed all this by telling me we're heavy to the lines right now, and it might stay that way with us having a Michigan presence, but no sports betting in California. And from what we've seen this week, it could be a while before we see sports betting in California. Directly related to the Michigan market being all in on Detroit this week, it's been all in on the Lions, as you alluded to, Super Bowl futures for months. The Lions are BetMGM's largest liability, worst outcome in Super Bowl futures. And as it turns out, it's in the NFC for the second worst as well, with the 49ers, a heavy liability. Again, Christian Cipollini at BetMGM, we're rooting for the AFC when it comes to futures. The Niners and Lions are both big losers on the futures book.
So interesting. And I know the Niners are bet a lot nationally, but just crazy to think that the gigantic state of California, you can't do sports betting there.
No.
But when it comes to the AFC Championship game, what are we seeing from bettors in terms of picking a side in that one?
Well, I think kind of the most interesting development so far this week, the Superbook opened Baltimore -3.5 even Tuesday. And then, earlier in the week on Tuesday, the Superbook, Circa Sports, South Point here in Vegas all went to -4, and they all remain at -4 today, Maria. BetMGM is inclined to stay at Ravens -3.5, but it is at -115. So they're kind of leaning toward that Ravens -4 at BetMGM as well. But what Christian Cipollini again told me, they're taking more Ravens bets overall, and +3.5 is all Chiefs money, which is kind of what's kept them from wanting to go to that -4. And they've had some limited instances at BetMGM where they've been at 3. And obviously at 3, people love the Ravens in that situation.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where the line moving even a half a point or a point is greatly influencing, which way bettors go. I think even more so than usual. And that's why, I've hesitated a little bit. And if you like the Ravens, the best thing to do was to, get that line very early. But to wrap things up here, we are close enough to the Super Bowl that people are thinking a lot more seriously about MVP of the big game. So what's at stake currently for the sports books?
And I would say it's great to think about this early if you really have if you think you have a feel for what's going to happen, because you can get much better prices right now. So again, this is from BetMGM. Christian Cipollini said the Super Bowl MVP action is loaded up on Lamar Jackson. He's number one in tickets, number one in money, number one in liability. And ticket count, Maria, is actually reasonably close among the top two. Then it drops off quite a bit. Jackson taking 15% of all bets. Christian McCaffrey for the Niners, 12.5% of all bets. But money is a landslide. Jackson is taking 32% of all dollars in this market at BetMGM, more than 2 times as much money as McCaffrey, and he's lapping the field even more so, everybody else. He opened the 4-1 favorite, Jackson did. Now he's plus 220. You could have gotten McCaffrey at 10-1 to open in the wild card round. Obviously, the Niners didn't play in the round, but he was on the board. He's now 6-1. You got Brock Purdy as the plus 325 second choice, Patrick Mahomes, the 4-1 third choice. And I think that's kind of another interesting development in this market, Maria. Mahomes, third choice, 7th in ticket count, 8th in money, despite being quarterback of the defending Super Bowl champion. And a couple of those ahead of him, Josh Allen among them, are no longer in the playoffs. So at the moment, let me stress that, let me stress that part of it. At the moment, things are fluid. BetMGM not only wouldn't mind a repeat Chiefs Super Bowl title, but they wouldn't mind a Mahomes MVP win as well.
I'm sure, but meanwhile, bettors probably have some Mahomes fatigue. And again, if you really like the Ravens, it just makes sense to bet on Lamar. And then Christian McCaffrey as sort of a longer shot seems like a really interesting play as well. But Patrick, Everson, we always appreciated having you on and keeping us updated on the betting markets.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Maria. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too. Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's going to do it for this edition of Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again Thursday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.